ViaWeb is a story about why not to wear a Bill Cosby sweater to an investment meeting. Hi, my name is Thomas, and in the next several minutes I'll explain 4 lessons that Paul Graham and his partner Robert learned in 3 years of creating and managing ViaWeb. It all began in 1995 in an apartment building in Harvard Square. It was Robert's apartment while he was completing grad school in some unimportant and underfunded university in Cambridge, when in the summer of 1995, Paul visited him. Before ViaWeb, Paul came up with the idea called Artflix. It seems like a similar name to a certain online movie distribution company, no? Anyway, Artflix's goal was to get art galleries online. He wanted art to be accessible online, and everything was going well until, he realized art galleries didn't want to be online. So the first lesson is to make something that people want to buy. It seems so simple, but Paul assures that so many founders do the opposite. After having so many doors slammed in his face, Paul got the idea. No art online. Okay, geez. But Paul could not keep but hearing about this new trend that was emerging in the aftermath of the introduction of the internet. Yes, indeed, there was a time before the internet, what might as well be called the modern Middle Ages, where you could not Google where to get a Daft Punk poster for your new college dorm room. It was a time before e-commerce. Paul and his partner tossed around a few ideas about how they could come up with a software that would build an online store for companies wanting to be a part of this new trend. Paul realized the software he made for Artflix was similar enough that he could just refurbish it and make it ViaWeb. Which brings us to our next lesson. Find what sets you apart and focus on that. Paul's big idea was, why make ViaWeb a software? Instead, it should be accessible straight through the web page, and here's where it gets a little confusing for those who don't understand computer science. He mentions that it's something similar to something him and his buddies did with Xterms, which just ran X Windows, which was the brain of a server. So he decided to think of it as Xterms as the browser, like Safari for example, and have application run on the server. Just follow me here. This is a big deal because it was the first web-based application that ever had been created. The only competitor that these guys had was an application called iCat, which sucked apparently because they couldn't code for all the kitty food in the world. Secondly, these kids were whip smart. Near the beginning, they hired on a third programmer by the name of Trevor, who went to the same unimportant and unknown grad school that Robert did. Together, they coded all the time. Which brings us to lesson 3. Know who your people are and know what they hate and love. Paul first thought his customers were going to be large catalog companies wanting to get online, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. They dreaded the internet like the plague. Instead, his people were individual merchants like Ray here. Ray sold books about the evolution of the sugar cane, and he was very specialized and thus really excited for the start of the internet because before he relied only on people coming into his store, and now he could reach a much wider audience. After realizing who his people were, he realized a little bit more about them, mainly that they hated software. Paul remembers that he was trained when downloading software to think that it was automatically not going to work. He dreaded downloading stuff and he had a PhD in comp sci. And so, they made a confidence boosting video. Okay, joke lesson, but true story. Paul actually had an investor do this, and he didn't accept the money from that investor. The last lesson, and the one that was probably hardest learned, is most eloquently said by Notorious B.I.G. in a head-to-toe gold tracksuit when he said, "Mo money, mo problems." Again and again, Paul describes being distracted from his coding to deal with the whims and wishes of investors, who, at one point, almost kicked him out of his own company. Which he rounds out his lesson with, don't spend money so you don't need to raise it from investors. Don't feel too bad for Paul because Yahoo came around and bought him for $46 million.